Ah, here it is.
Is it here? Great! Hello?
Welcome.
Mr. Sudo, what are you doing here?
It's my home.
Really?
Just kidding.
You almost fooled me.
I'm so excited about today. I can't wait.
We get to eat some great food, right?
You will. Come in.
Yes. Wow. Look at all this.
These are all foods that go well with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori.
Let's eat.
Wait a minute.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about foods that are very compatible with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. Let's begin. Are you interested in matching? Pairing drinks is a popular subject these days.
I've always believed in the importance of matching food and drinks. I'm keen to learn more about combinations that enhance the pleasure of both.
I don't know why, but some food and drink pairings just seem to feel right.
Very good. Yes, it's all about perception.
Oh?
Understanding compatibility isn't easy, but it's fun. It's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle of taste elements. Let's begin.
Yes.
Cheers!
Cheers!
いただきます。That's nice.
So many dishes to choose from.
Everything looks so good. My mouth is watering. You look very happy. You really enjoy drinking.
It's so good.
True.
Yes.
I've heard of pairing food with brewed alcoholic drinks like sake, beer, and wine. But Honkaku Shochu and Awamori are distilled spirits, aren't they? How do you match them with food?
They contain more alcohol than brewed beverages, but you can drink them straight or diluted. The drinking style will impact the intensity of the flavor, allowing you to enjoy the same drink in many ways. This makes it easier to pair with all kinds of different foods.
I see. Do the raw ingredients make a difference, like sweet potato or barley?
Honkaku Shochu is mostly made from ingredients like rice, barley, sweet potatoes, and buckwheat.
Right.
The base raw ingredient for Awamori is indica rice or long-grain Thai rice. These are things we eat on a daily basis, right? So it's unlikely Honkaku Shochu or Awamori will clash with foods.
I see. How well do they go with different types of cuisines, such as Japanese, Western, or Chinese?
Honkaku Shochu and Awamori produced in recent years have a distinct character, but they don't have a strong flavor of their own. Also, as alcohol is a palate cleanser, drinking Honkaku Shochu and Awamori is hardly likely to ruin the flavor of your food, regardless of the type of cuisine you're eating. They go well with everything.
You mean they're good to drink with any kind of food?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that. You might find some pairings too unusual for your liking, but that goes for sake, wine, and beer as well. Coming up with good pairings is a skill. That's what makes it so interesting.
I've seen so much information in the media on the pairing of food and drinks, but it's never really clicked for me. Maybe because compatibility is such a difficult concept to understand.
Well, it certainly isn't an easy concept. Even if someone raves about the perfect marriage between certain drinks and food, if you personally don't feel it's right, it doesn't make sense to you. In order to appreciate compatibility, you need to understand the factors behind it. What I'm going to do now is to share with you what I've learned from experience. If you don't drink with your food, but separately, you're simply enjoying the flavor of the food itself or the drink itself, nothing more. But if you drink immediately after eating something, or eat immediately after drinking. In either case, what you perceive is different than a simple sense that something is delicious or not. You will feel that the combination either enhances the taste or makes it feel strange. This is how you determine compatibility, by analyzing which of these two kinds of sensations is more dominant overall.
Could you be more specific?
Okay, think of what happens when you drink Honkaku Shochu or Awamori immediately after eating something. When you eat something, the taste of the food and its components lingers in your mouth. But when you follow by drinking some Honkaku Shochu or Awamori, the food tastes and components will have a subtle effect, changing the original flavor of the drink. If the sweetness of the food is strong, it will enhance the sweetness of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori while reducing the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness. If, on the other hand, the sweetness of the food is weak, it will weaken the sweetness of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori while enhancing the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness. Foods rich in umami, saltiness, fats, and oils, or with a cloying texture will reduce the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of the drink. Whereas any proteins, bitterness, astringency, and spiciness in the food will enhance the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of the drink. These factors combine to create a complex reaction that affects the flavor of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori for better or for worse.
So if you drink right after eating something, the flavor of the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori will be slightly different from that you experience when drinking straight out of the bottle.
Yes, exactly. How you perceive and evaluate the difference in flavor will depend on how you feel about the food. It's different depending on the food you've just eaten. If it's delicious, you'll want to enjoy the lingering flavor of the food in your mouth. So you wouldn't want a Honkaku Shochu or Awamori that would damage the aftertaste of the food, however subtly. This is what we refer to as the desired effect. If the food is delicious, you don't want something that will lessen or worsen its aftertaste. You evaluate compatibility by how well each pairing achieves this desired effect. If the food is rich or spicy, then you'll want something to refresh your palate. That's the desired effect in this case, and you evaluate based on how well it's achieved. If the food is bland, then you want the drink to add more flavor. So your evaluation should be based on how well this desired effect is achieved.
How does the evaluation work?
It affects the taste of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. If it achieves the desired effect, it will feel right. When it doesn't give the desired effect, it will seem a bit strange. This is not quite the same sensation as taste.
And this is how you sense compatibility?
Yes, if it feels right, then it's a good pairing. If it feels strange, you could call it an unusual pairing.
So, compatibility is determined by how well the food and drink go together?
Yes, but there's more to it than just whether they go well together. You have to take a lot of other things into consideration. For instance, with a dish like Korean barbecue that comes with a dipping sauce, you must evaluate compatibility taking into account the full combination of ingredients. When you take a drink after this dish, the way to determine compatibility is to judge how well the drink meets your expectations in terms of desired effects.
You mean compatibility depends on the way in which you eat and drink?
Well, there are no strict rules. But if you're really serious about creating a good pairing, you do need to take all these things into account.
Compatible alcoholic drinks are said to enhance the flavor of food, right?
Yes, that's a very important point. Honkaku Shochu and Awamori definitely contribute to this synergy. These drinks especially also cleanse the palate, giving you a neutral base from which to appreciate the true flavor of the food itself.
I wanted to ask you about that. So far, you've talked about what happens when food is followed with Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. But what about when you eat after drinking?
In that case, the food will influence the aftertaste of the Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. It's the same principle. Having said that, Honkaku Shochu and Awamori don't have a strong aftertaste, so they have little impact on the flavor of the food that you eat after drinking them.
So how is the best way to evaluate compatibility?
Since Honkaku Shochu or Awamori have little effect on what you eat afterwards, it's better to eat before drinking to evaluate the compatibility of food and drink.
I'm starting to get the picture.
Me too.
Good. Now you'll find it easier to understand the key points for determining compatibility.
So, how do you actually go about evaluating compatibility?
The full-scale method is rather difficult, so let's stick with the simplified method. First, prepare the food and the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. Before you start, do your best to clear your mind of all preconceptions. Take a bite of food and think about the desired effects. In other words, what you want from the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. If you don't have a clear idea of what you want, keep it simple. If the food is delicious, you want something that won't damage its aftertaste. If the food is too rich or spicy, you want something that will refresh your palate. Once you've decided what you want, memorize the flavor of the food before swallowing it. Keeping the flavor in mind, focus on the desired effect, and within 5 seconds, carefully taste a mouthful of Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. How does it feel? If it feels right, then it's a good pairing. If it doesn't trigger any reaction, then the pairing is neutral. If it feels strange, we call it an unusual pairing. That's all there is to it. But nothing is ever absolute. Even if it feels strange to you, you should evaluate the pairing as unusual rather than poor.
What are the key points to look for?
When tasting Honkaku Shochu or Awamori, it's important to always keep clearly in mind the desired effect while staying focused on the flavor of the food. What is it that you want from the drink? As long as you have a clear idea of what you want, you will be able to properly perceive whether it feels right or strange to you. This is essential for you to correctly evaluate the pairing. If you don't have a clear idea of what you want, you'll simply be eating and drinking. You won't be able to make a proper evaluation of compatibility.
So you have to consider the overall flavor of the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. That sounds difficult without a lot of practice.
That's true to an extent. But whether the taste feels right or strange is mostly determined by the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. This is the key point. So if you find it difficult to evaluate the pairing based on the overall flavor, try focusing on that bitterness, astringency, and spiciness and see how it feels. The result will more or less be the same as an evaluation based on overall flavor.
So it's whether the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness feel strange or not.
Right. Now, let's try to evaluate this pairing of prosciutto and Honkaku Shochu using the simplified method. First, rid your mind of any preconceptions you have regarding compatibility. Take a bite of prosciutto. Think about the desired effects, what you want from the Honkaku Shochu. Memorize the flavor of the prosciutto before swallowing it. Keeping the flavor in mind, focus on the desired effects, and before 5 seconds pass, carefully taste a mouthful of Honkaku Shochu. Now swallow the prosciutto. Taste a mouthful of Honkaku Shochu. Does it feel right? Or does it feel strange? Or perhaps the feeling is neutral? If you're not sure, focus on the bitterness, astringency, or spiciness. Does it feel strange or not? Well, what did you think of the evaluation method?
It wasn't that difficult.
I agree. Keeping in mind the flavor of the prosciutto, I focused on what I wanted from the drink, which was not to damage the aftertaste. This made it easier for me to get a good grasp of the compatibility.
Excellent! A good start for beginners.
But we each ended up with different results. Is that okay?
No problem. Compatibility is all about perception. Your evaluations differed because you had different expectations toward the Honkaku Shochu in terms of desired effects.
I liked the umami and saltiness of the prosciutto, so I wanted something that would not damage the aftertaste of the food. But to me, this Honkaku Shochu was rather bitter, so it didn't give my desired effect.
The prosciutto was too salty for me, so I wanted something that would refresh my palate. I thought the Honkaku Shochu had a pronounced bitter and astringent flavor, so it was exactly what I wanted.
The prosciutto enhanced the bitterness and astringency of the Honkaku Shochu, but depending on how well it achieves your desired effect, you might evaluate this pairing as either good or unusual. In every case, compatibility is determined by how well it achieves the effect you are wanting. That's why, when stating your evaluation, it's most important to clearly identify your desired effects.
Honkaku Shochu and Awamori can be drunk straight, on the rocks, as mizuwari or oyuwari. I guess you can choose any drinking style for an evaluation.
Yes, that's right.
What sort of food goes well with Honkaku Shochu or Awamori?
As you gain more experience in evaluating compatibility, you'll realize that while many foods make a good match, there are some that won't, to varying degrees. We call this their compatibility level.
What kind of foods have a high level of compatibility?
Compatibility depends on how well the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori responds to your expectations in terms of desired effects. If the response is good, then it should feel right. This feeling has a lot to do with the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. If it's too strong or too stimulating, it just won't feel right. This bitterness, astringency, and spiciness are determined not just by the character of the drink itself. There is also the effect of the food you've just eaten. If the food's flavors and components enhance the taste, then compatibility is high. Highly compatible foods are foods that mellow the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. The food will help enhance the flavor of the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori, making them more likely to respond to your expectations for something that won't damage the aftertaste of the food, or to your desire for something to refresh your palate.
Could you give us some examples of foods that reduce the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori?
As I explained in Part 1, some food tastes and components have a mellowing effect on the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori, while others will intensify these qualities. Strong sweetness, umami, saltiness, fats and oils, or cloying textures have a mellowing effect. We call these compatibility enhancing factors. On the other hand, foods with weak sweetness, proteins, bitterness, astringency, and spiciness will intensify the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness. We call these compatibility degrading factors, since they lower the compatibility level of foods.
So highly compatible foods are full of compatibility enhancing factors and have few compatibility degrading factors, right?
Yes, exactly. Take, for example, grilled dried mackerel. Its compatibility enhancing factors would be umami, saltiness, and fat, whereas its protein content would be a degrading factor. As it has more enhancing factors than degrading factors, it's easy to see that it falls in the category of compatible foods. So we say grilled dried mackerel has a high compatibility level. When you drink Honkaku Shochu or Awamori after eating this grilled dried fish, you'll find that its quality has improved. The bitterness, astringency, and spiciness have mellowed, and you will achieve your desired effect, whether it's avoiding damaging the aftertaste of the food or refreshing your palate. In other words, it feels right.
So if there are a lot more compatibility enhancing factors than compatibility degrading factors, you have a good pairing.
Now, let's look at a side dish of plain shredded cabbage. If you don't add dressing, there are no factors to enhance compatibility. Instead, the weak sweetness and bitterness of the cabbage are detrimental to compatibility. This means that if you drink Honkaku Shochu or Awamori after eating shredded cabbage, the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of the drink will become more pronounced. After eating the cabbage, you'd probably want something that would enhance its flavor. But as the cabbage intensifies the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of the drink, it doesn't achieve this desired effect, so it has a low compatibility level.
So looking at the compatibility enhancing and degrading factors of a food will give you an idea of its compatibility level.
That's right. Comparing the number of compatibility enhancing factors to that of the degrading factors makes it easier to determine how well the food will go with Honkaku Shochu or Awamori. Obviously, there are exceptions, but when that happens, you've discovered something new.
I think I understand about foods with a high level of compatibility, but what about compatibility levels for Honkaku Shochu and Awamori?
The overall compatibility, whether they pair well or badly with food, is what we indicate by the compatibility level of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. Compatibility depends on how well the Honkaku Shochu or Awamori achieves the desired effect, If the response is good, then it should feel right. A Honkaku Shochu or Awamori is more likely to feel right if it's not that bitter, astringent, or spicy. So this would be an important characteristic, giving it a high compatibility level. High compatibility level Honkaku Shochu or Awamori must also be able to resist the compatibility degrading factors of food that tend to intensify bitterness, astringency, and spiciness.
So the Honkaku Shochu and Awamori shouldn't be too bitter, astringent, or spicy, but be able to withstand the compatibility degrading factors of food.
Yes, so it has to be mild. Diluting should not make it more bitter or astringent. It should always retain its character.
Mild, but able to withstand dilution.
Yes, but diluting drinks with hot water will make all drinks taste mild without losing character. So you need to take into account the drinking style as well.
Mr. Sudo, so what principles should we follow to pair food and Honkaku Shochu and Awamori so they complement each other?
Foods with a high level of compatibility should go well with all Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. Neutral foods don't have much of a mellowing effect on the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. So you need to pair this kind of food only with drinks that have high compatibility levels.
So it depends a lot on the compatibility levels of the food.
Yes.
How about if you change the seasoning of the food? Can that help improve the compatibility?
Yes. Seasoning can be used to increase the compatibility enhancing factors: strong sweetness, umami, fat and oil, cloying texture, and reduce the compatibility degrading factors: weak sweetness, proteins, bitterness, astringency, and spiciness.
Oh. So compatibility with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori can increase with seasonings.
Can you increase the compatibility level of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori?
The higher the alcohol content, the better the compatibility. Also, it's better to dilute the drink with hot rather than cold water to improve compatibility.
I thought it would be more complicated, but I'm relieved to hear that there are such basic guidelines for pairing food and drink.
Compatibility is based on perception, so we're dealing with very complex and delicate sensibilities. I didn't want to overwhelm you by going into detail, so I thought it would be a good idea to start off with the basics. The details can wait till after you gain more experience. So, let's start developing your sense of how to match Honkaku Shochu and Awamori with food. To recap, some food factors act to enhance, while others degrade compatibility. Enhancing factors are strong sweetness, umami, saltiness, fat and oil, and cloying texture. Compatibility degrading factors are weak sweetness, proteins, bitterness, astringency, and spiciness. If there are more enhancing factors than degrading factors, the food will have a high level of compatibility and will go well with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori because it reduces bitterness, astringency, and spiciness. In general, all Honkaku Shochu and Awamori have a high level of compatibility. So the key to a good pairing lies in the compatibility level of the food. Let's take a look at different foods to develop your sense of a good pairing. We'll start off with a favorite dish, yakitori. The compatibility enhancing factors of chicken yakitori with salt are umami, fat, and saltiness. The compatibility degrading factors would be the proteins. As the enhancing factors are dominant, yakitori with salt goes well with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. The richer the umami, the better the match. Chicken is high in umami, so it has high compatibility. Now for yakitori with sweetened soy sauce. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami and fat from the chicken. A degrading factor is proteins in the chicken. If the sweetness of the soy sauce is strong, it becomes an enhancing factor, and if it is weak, it becomes a degrading factor. The stronger the sweetness of the sauce, the higher the level of compatibility and the better the match. Beef steak. The compatibility enhancing factors are the umami and fat of the beef and the saltiness of the seasoning. The proteins in the beef are a degrading factor. Well-aged beef cooked rare is full of umami and makes for an even better match. Beef sukiyaki. The compatibility enhancing factors are the umami and fat of the beef and the strong sweetness of the sauce. The proteins in the beef are a degrading factor. If the simmering is kept to a minimum so that the beef is cooked rare, the compatibility level will become even higher. Rafute, an Okinawan braised pork belly specialty. The umami of the pork and kombu kelp and the strong sweetness of the granulated sugar and brown cane sugar are compatibility enhancing factors. Much of the fat, another enhancing factor, is cooked out, but on the whole, the enhancing factors are dominant, so it's highly compatible. Salted grilled fish. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami, fat, and saltiness, whereas the degrading factors are the proteins. The enhancing factors are dominant, so it makes a good pairing. The richer the umami and fat in a fish, the higher the level of compatibility. Grilled dried fish. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami, fat, and saltiness, whereas the degrading factors are the proteins. Drying concentrates the umami and fat, enhancing the compatibility so that it makes a good match. Kusaya is a dish in which fish is immersed in salty fish sauce and dried. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami and saltiness, whereas the degrading factors are the proteins. The fermenting liquid enhances the saltiness, and the drying process concentrates the umami, making it a highly compatible food. Fish marinated in sweet miso. The compatibility enhancing factors are the umami and fat in the fish, and the umami and strong sweetness of the miso, whereas the degrading factors are the proteins in the fish and miso. The enhancing factors are dominant, so it's a highly compatible food. Fish simmered in a sweet and savory broth. The umami of the fish and the strong sweetness of the broth are compatibility enhancing factors, while the proteins are degrading factors. The enhancing factors are dominant, so it has a high level of compatibility. The stronger the sweetness, the better the match. Deep fried fish. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami, saltiness, and oil, whereas the proteins are degrading factors. Frying the fish well will concentrate the umami and intensify the enhancing factors, making it a highly compatible food. Spicy mentaiko. The compatibility enhancing factors are the umami and saltiness of the Alaskan pollock roe and umami of kombu kelp, whereas the degrading factors are the proteins and spiciness. Mentaiko is rich in umami with an appropriate degree of saltiness, so enhancing factors are dominant, making it a highly compatible food. Deep fried fish cake. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami, strong sweetness, and oil, whereas the proteins are degrading factors. Since the enhancing factors are dominant, it makes a good match. The firmer the texture and the stronger the sweetness, the higher the compatibility. Tuna sashimi. The umami and fat are compatibility enhancing factors, and the proteins are degrading factors. Since it has a lot of proteins, it needs to have enough umami and fat as a balance. The Pacific bluefin tuna is a species that has a lot of umami and fat, especially in the toro or belly portion. Here, the compatibility enhancing factors outdo the degrading factors and achieve a high level of compatibility. Even if the sashimi itself has a low level of compatibility, the soy sauce is rich in umami, sweetness, and saltiness, and a savory sauce would have a lot of umami and saltiness, so the compatibility enhancing factors would outdo the degrading factors. Sea bream sashimi. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami, and the degrading factors the proteins. So whether the compatibility is good will depend on how rich the umami is. If the fish is allowed to mature after bleeding and spiking, this will increase the umami. Blanching will also help retain the umami under the skin so that the compatibility enhancing factors become dominant. Hirame sashimi. The compatibility enhancing factors are umami, and the degrading factors the proteins. If the fish is allowed to mature after bleeding and spiking, this will increase the umami. Also, sandwiching the fish between kombu kelp will infuse it with the umami from the kombu, so that the compatibility enhancing factors become dominant. Ponzu soy sauce has a refreshing zest to it and is rich in umami and an appropriate amount of salt, both of which are compatibility enhancing factors. Serving foods with ponzu soy sauce is a way to increase their compatibility levels. Simmered vegetables. The umami from the broth is a compatibility enhancing factor, but this is canceled out by the weak sweetness of the vegetables and the broth, which is a degrading factor. To turn it into a compatible dish, you need to boost the sweetness and umami of the broth. A vegetable salad with only a hint of sweetness. There are no compatibility enhancing factors, only the degrading factors of weak sweetness and bitterness. But you can boost its compatibility level by serving it with an umami-rich oil dressing. A salad of sweet vegetables, such as ripe tomatoes and fruity carrots. Compatibility is enhanced by the strong sweetness, and there are no degrading factors. Even cucumbers that are only faintly sweet can help to boost compatibility by reducing the bitterness, astringency, and spiciness of Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. So if served with the right vegetables, a salad will make a good and healthy pairing, delicious even without dressing. Nuts. The fat and saltiness are compatibility enhancing factors, while the proteins are a degrading factor. Since there are more enhancing than degrading factors, this food has a high compatibility level. Chocolate. The strong sweetness and the cacao fats are compatibility enhancing factors, but the bitterness from the cacao is a degrading factor. The sweeter the chocolate, the higher the compatibility. Bitter chocolate tends to overwhelm the compatibility enhancing factors of strong sweetness and fat. Fruits. There's only the enhancing factor of a strong sweetness. There are no compatibility degrading factors. That's why fruits taste even more delicious when eaten with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. And that's about it. Do you think you've developed a knack for pairing foods that go well with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori?
I think so, yes. I've learned that the key point is to focus on the compatibility enhancing and degrading factors.
I think I'll now be able to understand articles on how to pair food and drinks.
Focusing on the compatibility enhancing and degrading factors will assist you in finding your way through a very complicated field. I do hope today's discussion will help you to enjoy the marriage of delicious Honkaku Shochu and Awamori and food. And on that note, I'd like to wrap up this lecture on how to pair food with Honkaku Shochu and Awamori. Thank you.
Thank you very much.